Welcome to the Quantum Guide Show, where you will find interesting guests and discussions about cutting-edge topics to assist you on your journey. The Quantum Guide Show is ideally suited to the newly awakened and for those who feel isolated by their newfound beliefs. The mind, body, and spirit thrive when we have a mission, and there is no greater mission than to become the change that we wish to see in the world. So hit the like button, subscribe to my YouTube, Odyssey, and Telegram channels, and share this show with your friends. Welcome back to the Quantum Guide Show. Today in episode 112, my returning guest is Ken Swartz. Ken is the founder and chief science officer of C60 PurplePower. He has run several research science laboratories over the course of his career and discovered C60 while developing the MOXY fusion reactor. During his research, he became aware of the powerful free radical neutralizing properties of C60. In 2016, he founded C60 PurplePower, which is one of the topics of our show today. Ken, welcome back to the Quantum Guide Show. Did I leave anything out?
Oh, yeah, probably a few things or two, but you got it all pretty much. And it was really a long introduction anyway, if you read the whole thing.
Well, feel free to, share with the
Yeah.
viewers anything you want. So I'm really excited about C60 for so many reasons. I just want to tell the viewers briefly how I found out about it. My friend, Chris Matthew from Forbidden Knowledge News started becoming a sponsor of yours, Ken, and he started taking it. And within a month, I noticed such a difference in the way he looked. I went, oh my God, I got to get me some of this. And so I tried some, and I'm an older person. I'm 67 years old, and this body has been through a lot. And so I find that I take probably a little bit more than a younger person, but I found it's changed my life so profoundly. So I really wanted to bring you back and have you tell us. So let's start at the beginning. How did you discover it? What happened? And then please do tell us how it works, as though I know nothing about it, because some of the viewers, this is brand new information for them.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, first I was working on the metal oxygen fusion reactor. I was running the project. And one of the things, when you do the research on it, a lot of the people working on it is like the late doctor this and the dead professor that. And so I didn't want to end up like that, or any of my crew, because they have family. So I went out and researching something to help as a radiation protection, because, this is research. We didn't really know what was everything that was going on. And I came across a stuff called carbon-60. Its science name is Buckminster fullerene, but most people just do use the nickname C60. And it's a 60 carbon atom shape, just like a soccer ball. And let me see if I can, maybe I'll show you. It kind of looks like, here we go.
Yes.
There we go. Yes, there, I'll get you. So I don't have a model with me, but you can kind of see behind me on this thing. It's 60 carbon atom shaped, like a little soccer ball. And in what it was discovered in 1985. It proved a long-standing mystery in astronomy. And then they got a Nobel Prize in 1996. And it wasn't until like the early 2000s, it was really hard to make until they came up with new methods. And in the early 2000s, they had enough, so they tested it. One of them is the main famous Botry study, where they gave it to Worcester rats, and it basically increased the rat lifespan by 90%. And so, which is kind of surprising. Here's a mysterious molecule discovered in outer space, even though we find it on Earth. Like the burnt wick of your candle is like 0.25% C60, but you'd have to eat a bucket of candle wicks to get something in our products. And so then they did lots of other things. I told the story about the radiation one. The first human study was actually in Japan. It was I'm in an airport, by the way, folks. So if you hear strange things in the background, that's what's happening. Some flight's taking off. So basically, it was put in a cream for Japanese women, and it found it reduced lines and wrinkles in Japanese women. And then they put it in a hair thing, and they rubbed it on people's heads, and they found that it increased hair growth, but and brought hair back from causes that were not associated with male pattern baldness. Sorry, guys, it'll slow down hair loss, but it will not bring it back. You have to do something else for that. Yeah, and they've done a lot of other things. They put some human cells in, like in vitro in the test tubes, because you can't really do certain tests on humans, but you can do it on their cells. They exposed one set of cells to one got C60, the other didn't. They exposed it to UV radiation, that you get, and the cells that had the C60 resisted UV radiation. And that's what people find a lot of times. Or even if you've been burned by the sun, if you take C60 and rub it on your sunburn, the swelling and heat will go way down really quickly, and chances are you won't peel. Works the same with mosquito bites. You just rub a little bit on mosquito bite. About 20 minutes later, the itching and pain ends. So that's just that's kind of some of the things. And they also found that it increased stem cells, and that came from a study where they gave rabbits arthritis, and then they were going to use the C60 to reduce the inflammation caused by arthritis, which the C60 did. But what they found out later in examining the rat's knees, that C60 had actually stimulated the growth of cartilage in the rat's knees, and that's where they discovered that it stimulates stem cell growth. And so that other studies went on there. We know from personal experience with our customers, because our company is on the Front Range of Colorado. That's Denver, Colorado Springs, Pueblo, anyway, Fort Collins. It's kind of that strip there. A lot of stem cell clinics. So we have a lot of people there in the area that use that. And so we had this 170-year-old guy. He'd been doing stem cell treatment, regularly. Usually you do that, like you're working on your knee. And what they do is they take out your blood, they spin your blood, and they can take out a fraction where the stem cells are hiding. And there's not too much in there, but in that day he came in, and they came running in packed from the spinner and the examining. They said, "You have 20 million stem cells." And that's one of the highest counts we've ever seen, especially considering your age, right? And then what are you doing? And of course, he told him the C60 PurplePower. So any stem cell treatment, and because it increases stem cells, that's one of the reasons why there's a lot of people have healing experiences, because it creates new cells. It wipes out senescent cells. Those are the zombie cells that aren't working right, that are in the fermentation mode. A lot of us have it, especially as we get older. And so it wipes out those ones, and then the cells. There needs to be new cells in your organs, so that stimulates stem cell growth. That's another great benefit of C60. And I guess I'll go on to the rest. Here we go, and we can do some other discussion. And the way C60 works, C60 is the only antioxidant that can increase athletic performance. And they've done meta studies on vitamin E and vitamin C, which are classic antioxidants. And one of the problems is that the meta studies, when they take dozens of studies and look at the results of dozens of studies, and what they found is taking extra vitamin C and extra vitamin E did not increase athletic performance. Because one of the things is there are oxidative radicals. Oxidative radicals are basically your body rusting. But some of them your body actually uses for signaling molecules. And one is the nitrogen oxide. That dilates your capillaries or contracts them, very important for blood pressure. There's hydrogen peroxide that's used in signaling molecules as a signaling molecule. But then there's some others that are around sulfur, iron, and zinc at lower energies. And they're used in various processes in the body. Well, when you take too much vitamin C or E, it interferes with that processing, right? So then your performance goes down. Whereas C60 only interacts with two oxidative radicals in the body that are so damaging, the body doesn't use them as signaling molecules. And the first is superoxide. That's produced a lot in your mitochondria, those little energy powerhouses in the cell. They're kind of like pollution. Usually a thing called SOD, superoxide dismutase, and catalase take care of superoxide. And then the other ion it goes with is the hydroxyl ion, which is the second most damaging oxidative radical in the body. And it's also usually the one produced by radiation, by the way. And so C60 interacts with both of those, and but it doesn't interact with any of the body's signaling molecules. So it can actually increase your athletic performance, and also has no toxicity. They did a study, when I'm talking about these studies about positive health benefits, we're talking maybe 0.1 milligrams or 0.2 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. That's a really low amount. So what they did is they say, at what level is C60 toxic? So they took it up to 1 gram per kilogram. That's 10,000 times that's 10,000 times, the health beneficial dose. If you did that with vitamin D or E or something, you'd probably kill the animal. But with C60, there was absolutely no negative effects at all, because it only interacts with those 2 oxidative radical species, and and they aren't signaling molecules. So C60 has no toxicity at any level. So if you take C60 a little bit late at night, it kind of stimulates everything, so it can keep you up. So we always recommend take it in the morning. That's the best time.
Fantastic, fantastic. Yeah, it is such a game changer. I was at the point where I was feeling sick and tired of being sick and tired all the time. I had poor quality of life, and it really changed things. Now, it didn't happen overnight. I've had to keep taking it, for well over a year now, but it's definitely constantly improving my life. So, as we get older too, we have a little bit trouble with memory, and of course, all kinds of toxicity, possibly heavy metals. And so what I wanted to ask you is, just for the viewers who aren't familiar with C60, take us through a little bit of how it travels through the body. So we ingest it. It's in an oil. I always take a digestive enzyme because I don't have a gallbladder, along with it. And then I always combine it too with raw cacao with salt and cayenne pepper. It's a little drink I do every morning, and I'm hoping that helps to assimilate it. So that was one of the questions, is should you eat with it? And then it gets into the stomach and it gets into the blood supply. So can you take, I know it's not toxic, but does it clear the body so that before you take the next dose? I'm not really sure how. I know you told me before, but it's been a while. If you could just explain a little bit about the path it takes within the body and how it works.
Yeah, C60 has no solubility in water at all. It's a non-polar substance, so you have to dissolve it in water's polar. It's got like a north and south pole, like a little magnet. C60 is non-polar because it's a sphere, right? And so it has to be dissolved in something that's non-polar, and what that is oil, or like olive oil or avocado oil or MCT coconut oil, which is the oils we use. And so basically there's 2 ways you can take it. The one I talked about is, you could apply it topically, and it is absorbed in the skin cells. And some of that, especially if you like swish around your mouth, that can be, it'll be absorbed through the gums. So that's sublingually or topically, some will get in. Of course, that takes a while. But if you're treating a skin thing, obviously that's the best way to do it. When you take it internal, it just goes, through your digestive system. It's almost indestructible. It is indestructible in the body. So basically it goes through your digestive system. It's carried along with the oils, and then the oils are absorbed in your intestine. So the C60 passes the blood barrier. Now it's floating around your blood, or the gut barrier, and then it'll also go through the blood brain barrier. And the cells seem to know how to take it. They pull C60 right out of the environment, or the blood, I guess you'd say, with endocytosis. And then the mitochondria, which are little cell organelles in the body, they pull it and use it as a moderator for oxygen production, for the production of ATP, which is your energy molecule. But a lot of oxygen radicals, like superoxide produced, are made there, and C60 is an SOD catalase mimic. So it basically, and this is the number one thing probably why C60 helps people. I mean, there's the other things, inflammation, because it gets rid of those superoxides, the hydroxyl radicals, like at a mosquito bite, or or other inflammation in your body. But in the mitochondria, as we get older, some of us out here with the gray hair, we're getting older, and what it does is our mitochondria run off, our larger cells make SOD and catalase to supply to the mitochondria. And as we get older, those cells just don't produce as much SOD and catalase as they used to. It's just a part of the process of getting older. And so when you take C60 replaces that missing SOD and catalase, because what C60 does, usually in our body, you got a superoxide ion. The SOD turns it into a hydrogen peroxide. Then the catalase turns it into a water and an oxygen. Whereas C60 just basically steals the electron off the superoxide, turns it back into oxygen, and uses that electron to give to a hydrogen ion. I'll get a little sciencey here. And so C60 can reset itself again and again and again. And so once it gets in there and replaces the missing SOD, your mitochondria, the energy producers in your cell can turn themselves back up. So now you get a lot of ATP, which is the energy molecule for like 95% of your cellular chemistry. But also, the mitochondria make a lot of other things. They make like precursors for RNA and DNA synthesis, which is pretty important. So you get the RNA and DNA you need for your cell to function. But also they take LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, and they turn it into pregnenolone, which is the precursor molecule for all the cells. I mean, for all the hormones. And that's actually why people get problems with the cholesterol as you get older, is because that LDL, instead of being used by your cells to make pregnenolone and some other things, cell membranes and stuff, it's floating around your bloodstream, so it gets oxidized. And once it gets oxidized, then it sticks to your arteries, and that's how you get plaque and a hardening of arteries. So you don't want that to happen. So instead of sticking around, it's being used by your cells. So your LDL levels go down and your hormone levels go up. And that's really important, but it's not like hormone replacement therapy. All the hormones go up. So like your pineal gland will produce more melatonin. Your hypothalamus, pituitary complex will produce more human growth hormone, and a dozen of other different hormones that it makes. And then like T3 and T4 in your thyroid, and also in your adrenal glands, it'll make more androgens, which are converted into testosterone, estrogen, whoever you are. That's obviously and it also makes, but this is a counterindication, by the way. It also, in the adrenals, make mineral corticoids. That's what regulates like blood thickness. So if you're on a blood thinner and you want to consult with your doctor before you take C60, because then the underlying condition that's causing your blood to be, quote, thick goes away. And now if you're taking a thinner, then your blood could be too thin. So with that, and also probably a little bit more testing with hormone replacement therapies, because, for instance, this is typical. We have a 7-year-old guy. He goes into his doctor. He's got testosterone levels at 350, which is pretty low. And so the doctor gives him creams to help push them up. And now he's up into about low 700s. And then he starts taking C60. A couple months later, he goes into his doctor and he's got testosterone level 1200, which is pretty good. So the doctor takes him off the cream. So that's and if you're doing estrogens, you might want to check the thing too, because you may reduce the need, because now your body's producing a little bit more. Like for me, I wasn't doing that, but I had any cell type in your body that have a lot of mitochondria. That's the cells that are going to benefit. And the number one cells in the body that have mitochondria, and the most number of them, are nerve cells. The nerve's like 2 pounds. It's like 2% of your body weight. It uses 20% of the energy. Also, the cells, the endocrine system, they're really hard working. They pour out a lot of hormones. And then the muscles, obviously, and the heart especially, they're very active. They have a lot of mitochondria because they do a lot of things. And for instance, the other thing I forgot to mention in the introduction, I started taking the C60 before the MOXY experiment. And then we took it during words, but afterwards I kept taking it because, I had more energy. The afternoon blahs, like you have at 2 a.m, they went away. And that was just it. And then about 7 months after taking the C60, I went into my eye doctor, and my DRUs, or dry macular degeneration, had completely disappeared. And my doctor was a little bit astounded because he'd never seen that happen before in his, many decades of service. He was a really old guy in his late 70s. I think he just kept going because he had nothing better to do. And so I was fine. But after I learned what happened there, I told my friend Gary Rodriguez. He was the electrical engineer on the MOXY project, and by then he had developed like severe wet macular degeneration. Rodriguez, he also had type 2 diabetes, which kind of brought it all on. And so we used to be able to post the before and after pictures, and he had like all kinds of heinous lesions on the inside of his eyeball. But some 3-letter agency said that's making a claim, so we had to take it down. But anyway, after 1 year taking a tablespoon of MCT coconut oil with C60 in it, his wet macular degeneration went away and completely healed. There were no signs that ever happened in his eyeball, which is, an amazing, never before witnessed occurrence. And also his type 2 diabetes went subclinical.
Mm-hmm.
And he's still got to watch his weight. That's the way something C60 is not the magic pill.
Mm-hmm.
It's
You
just
got
one
to work
tool.
with it.
Yeah, it's one tool in the toolkit
Mm-hmm.
for good health. It's like the engine oil, right? That makes everything work better. But if you don't have the right fuel, your car is not going to run. You don't have good fuel, it's not going to run. So good nutrition,
Yes.
proper diet, in good sleep, staying out of stressful environments, and toxins. Sure, it helps with them, but avoiding all as much as you can those things is really important.
And
And so
regular
oh yeah,
exercise.
exercise, that's a huge
And
one.
let me interrupt for a minute. I want to tell you what happened to me since taking C60. And this is over a year, probably 2 years I've been taking it, a little bit off and on, but been doing my best with it. And what I've noticed is my hair is nicer, my skin is so baby soft. I've got a super furry, soft little kitty cat, and my hair is as soft as hers is. I found that little weird things like skin tags and stuff disappeared. But the most profound thing was that I got the feeling back in my toes and feet. So from years of being what they call pre-diabetic and all of that, it really took its toll on my feet. So I had no feeling in my toes. I had very little feeling in my feet. And all the feeling has come back, and they're warm and they're pink now. They're not, sorry, I hope that this isn't too much information for the viewers, but they're my toes are warm and pink all the time now. And my circulation is so much better. My memory is better. I'm not as word starved. I still have a little bit of that, but it's mostly all gone. And so and the other thing too is the energy so that I can get out for walks. And I'm very careful with my diet, and I do my best to get enough body movement. So I'm working with it. And I'm just so thrilled to have found it. Now, I want to ask you too, unless this is changing the subject too much, but I understand that this occurs naturally, something to do with red giant stars, or
Oh yeah, that's how
I
it's.
thought that was interesting.
Yeah, on Earth they find it like around lightning strikes on trees, like the burnt wick of a candle. Meteoric impacts make it. They find some of the KT boundary, but the most thing is made, and actually there's a thing that's solved a mystery in astronomy. There's a thing called diffuse interstellar bands, and basically light shines through space and it's being absorbed in the infrared by something. And it was a really big band, right? So it had to be a molecule. Well, what kind of big molecule could survive in outer space? Well, obviously it's the C60 one. And what happens is C60, of course, is 60 carbon atoms. And in giant red stars, they're stars like our sun that burn up all of its hydrogen. Now it's turning helium into carbon. So obviously it's a very carbon-rich star. And it heats up, because the carbon burning is way hotter than hydrogen helium burning. And that causes the star to puff up really big and turn into a red giant. And as the outer layers of the carbon-rich star boil away into the outer space, a certain percentage, some 0 point something percent of that carbon is turned into C60. And so there's vast amounts of C60 between the stars, little molecules of it. Of course, there's not much anything between the stars, but a few of those something between the stars is C60, and that's enough to absorb the infrared light. So that's kind of and then they solved the mystery in astronomy. And they had a whole thing where they actually had to they used lasers in a vacuum with a piece of carbon to make it. And then they had to prove it was actually the C60 doing it, they had to actually make a chamber and it's so cold that it grew neon frost. So
Wow.
that's cold. And then they dropped the frozen C60 molecules on top of it. So they were like sitting on top of the neon frost, like, little styrofoam balls on grass. And then they hit it with the infrared beam and it absorbed in the right frequency and they proved it. So it was quite the effort. And then they gave a Nobel Prize in chemistry in 1996. Mostly there was 5 guys that started out with the project, but only 3 were left. And they figured, oh, we better give them, because they're all professor emeritus, right? Those are the old professors who are retired. So, if you're an old retired professor, you're pretty old. So, they were kicking off left and right. So they got the last 3 guys, Harry Kroto, Robert Kurl, and Richard Smalley, got the Nobel Prize in chemistry for the discovery of C60. And I guess the rest is history. Then I kind of talked about that. and that we're continuing to discover new uses for C60. And as more and more, health studies are done, we get more and more information on that. But there's a site people should go to if you want to learn about C60. Now, there's things we can post, and we do on our site. We got the different human studies I talked to. They did test tube studies like they did mast cells. Study human mast cells, that releases the histamines, that causes like the allergic response. And then they discovered when they put C60 in mast cells, it moderated the release of the histamines, right? Then they went over to an animal study, and they gave animals C60 and exposed them to an allergen to give them anaphylactic shock. And the C60 ones didn't get the cytokine storm, right? That wipes them out. So that's another thing. C60 prevents the cytokine storms. And with that also is true with viral infections and stuff. But we won't talk about that either.
Yeah, but please, the viewers, the listeners, hint.
Yeah.
Hint,
so anyway,
hint.
that's kind of some of the things of C60. And but if you go to whatisc60.org, that's whatisc60.org. That it's like a site that we and a couple other C60 companies sponsor. And so you can just go there and get like the human and the animal studies, which we can't post, and like a little synopsis of each one. So you can see the good, the bad, and like there's some types of C60 which have no benefit. Like I mentioned, it has to be dissolved single molecules in an oil, but particles of C60 have no benefit, right? They're particles, right? A particle surface, a crystal surface is completely different from molecular or atomic action, right? And so they're actually inflammatory. So there's some studies out there saying C60 is inflammatory. Well, particles of C60 are inflammatory. It's the same with glass. You need silica for good health, right? For your bones and teeth and all that kind of stuff. But glass is made of silica. So if I was to grind it up in little tiny nanoparticles and give it to you, it would probably have a bad effect. Same with C60. So you got to make sure that your C60 is dissolved in an oil. And the other thing, there's things you should be aware of. There's when the C60 market was small, there was just a handful of us. Everybody to be a quality product for their customers because they and their families and everybody took it themselves. Like now we have people who basically just fly by nighters. It's like the CBD business, just all this BS. So you want to make sure that there's three things you want to look for. Obviously, the first thing is how your C60 is produced. Our C60 is produced through sublimation, or the verb of that is sublimed. And basically it's if you remember sublimation from your high school chemistry classes, maybe you don't, it's when a solid turns into a gas and back into a solid. And so you take like the production ashes, which might be 10% C60, and the rest are just amorphous carbon. You put it in the sublimator, you heat it up to about 400 degrees Celsius, all the C60 turns into a gas and floats to the other side of the sublimator where it condenses. And that makes really pure C60, which is like 99.99% or 99.98%. Just the nature of sublimation ends up making a very pure product. But that's not the only way C60 is purified. A lot of C60 producers use oven-baked C60 or C60 that's produced by, that's a name for it, produced by methylbenzene, a known carcinogen.
Yeah.
And it's called toluene. And it's useful. The industrial C60 is made that way, for transistors or stuff, or various other things they use it for. But you probably don't want to be using that industrial type C60, because what it is you basically dissolve the C60 and the toluene, and then there's a process of purifying it from C70 and C80, and then they flush it out, and then they have the C60 and toluene. Then they start boiling off all the toluene, the methylbenzene. And so you get crystals, but no matter how much you boil, and then they bake the crystals, right, to get the very last bit of toluenes out, but you never get rid of all of it, right?
Right.
And also, if you see people out there, there's some say they're supercharged C60. Well, they're using like 99.9% pure C60. That means the other 0.1% is toluene, and their C60 is not supercharged. It's just contaminated, and they're lying to you. And then there's people but there's also other people that don't use any C60 at all in their products. So I'm not going to mention any names, but if you go look for C60 Insider, he's done studies on it, independent studies. He takes his stuff, sends it to universities, gets back the results. Certain manufacturers have no C60 in it. Just go look for the C60 Insider on YouTube. You'll get the videos. And then So on our products, which I don't have a package with me because I'm traveling, but on the side of our products, we have a QR code, and you can scan it with your phone, and that takes you to a web page. We can actually look at our certificates of analysis. So, because we only use like organic, healthy olive oil, because everybody knows about olive oil, the Mediterranean diet. C60 is really good there, but olive oil can be a little bit strong for some people. Like me, I have a sensitive digestive system, so I started putting it in avocado oil. The first one who put it in anything besides olive oil, because the scientists use olive oil because it's everybody uses it and it's well characterized. And so I can take C60 and avocado oil without any problems with that extra virgin olive oil might cause. And we also put it in MCT coconut oil.
Yes.
And we also have gummies. Actually, I do a box of gummies here. Well, I'll show it to you later. We have our new sugar-free gummies, just came out like 2 weeks ago, and they're really good. And so that's in whole coconut oil. But the MCT coconut oil, that's special. I made it for my friend Gary Rodriguez because he was MCT stands for medium chain triglyceride. And what that does is your liver will turn MCTs into ketones, which your cells can use as fuel. Because like he had glucose problems, right? So, and your cells need glucose to process. And if they can't get the glucose in their cells, the cells are damaged, right? Because they don't have fuel. It's like your car running out of gas, right? It tears up the engine. But if you're taking MCT oil, that creates ketones, and your cells can use ketones as a flex fuel. So as a guy with type 2 diabetes, by having ketones in his body, it kind of just protects the cells from damage, because it goes up and down like that. So that's why we put it in MCT coconut oil. And if you're a like you have glucose processing issues, or if you're an athlete, because athletes love the MCT coconut oil and some of the gummies, what they do is they'll put it in the water that they drink, shake it up and take it, so you get like the extra super energy boost from the MCTs making those ketones. Plus you get the antioxidant effects of C60, the only antioxidant that actually increase athletic performance, and you got your water too, all in one shot. We've had people go from mid-pack in their field to champions in the field using C60 MCT coconut oil in their water. Just a hint there. And oh, by the way, it's not banned by any of the athletic organizations.
Oh, that's good to know. That's really good to know. So, yeah, it's a marvelous product. I can't, recommend it highly enough. The links will be below, including a link to Chris Matthew. If you use his code, you can get, I think, 10% off and free shipping in the United States. And also, the links to where you can find out more. They will all be in the description. So Ken, I'm fascinated to also know a bit about the MOXY reactor. I haven't got a clue what it is. Is it of benefit to humankind? Is it different than what we're used to thinking of as reactors? I was really quite surprised to find out that our nuclear reactors really only just heat water, which produces steam, which produces the energy. I was kind of surprised to find that out. I always thought it was something to do with splitting the atom and harnessing all that energy. So anyway, I'll just be quiet, and please do tell us all about the MOXY reactor.
Yeah, well, most of the nuclear reactors we have today are fission plants. That means they're breaking stuff apart, usually uranium-235, sometimes the plutonium-uranium mixes in like Japan. And they basically break these bigger atoms apart, and they make fragments. And a lot of those fragments are super radioactive. That's, like Chernobyl, Fukushima. That's what happens when one of those things blows up. And also the fuel is super radioactive for tens of thousands of years and has to be put in special casks and buried, for tens of thousands of years, which is highly unlikely. So anyway, but there's also a different type of thing called fusion. And that's what happens in our sun. In our sun, the sun basically takes hydrogens and fuses them into deuteriums, which are a hydrogen and a proton and a neutron. So still type of isotope. Then they'll make tritium, and then they'll eventually get to helium, which is basically 2 protons and 2 neutrons. And then when our sun's going to burn hydrogen until it burns up the helium, and then all that's left is the helium. Then it's going to fuse the helium into carbon, and so that way it produces a lot of energy. But it doesn't produce radioactive particles. So if you had a fusion reactor and you turned it on and off, the minute you turn it off, it stops, right? There's no more radioactivity. It can't melt down. It can't blow up. It's really super safe. It does produce gamma rays, but if you're gut shielding, you'll be fine. Well, MOXY, metal oxygen fusion reactor, that's what MOXY stands for. M for the metal, OXY for the oxygen. Metal oxygen, it's a completely new type of fusion. It's where it's taking the oxygen atom and fusing it with a metal. And the first people to really, in an pressurized argon atmosphere, the first people to do this were actually a couple of Japanese scientists called Osawa and Kushi. And this happened in the late 1950s, early 1960s, before I was even around. And basically what they were doing is they took basically a bulb, kind of like a sodium street lamp bulb, but they made it, of course, ceramic because it's going to get very hot in there. And so they put in a little bit of sodium. They pressurized it with argon gas. That's a neutral gas. That's one of the noble gases. It doesn't react with anything. That's the moderator. Then they put sodium in there, like a sodium street lamp, but they also put an equal amount of oxygen in there. They had done some research before, right, on this, and they were doing, this is like the formal experiment which proved the case. And then they turned their little basically MOXY sodium street lamp bulb on, and the bulb glowed in that that kind of orangish yellow light we know of sodium street lamps, right? They're probably down the street from you. And but then over several hours it turned to a purple color. And purple is the color of potassium. If you take sodium and you fuse it with oxygen, it goes from a 23 and a 16 equals 39, the atomic weight of potassium. And you get the purple of spectral line of potassium, showing that they had changed sodium and oxygen and fused it together to make potassium. And that was pretty much the conclusive experiment. And actually it was a very efficient process. It could have actually provide a commercial source of pure of good potassium. But what happened was, Japan was under occupation, and it was a threat to, like, the Westinghouse nuclear fission reactors, like Fukushima that melted down, that they were putting into Japan, so it got suppressed. And those guys tried their best, but that was like in the early 1960s. Have you ever heard about it? And so basically it got crushed and I had read about it decades before, right? But it was in the late 2010s, that area around, or late 2000, I don't know, 11, 12, whatever it was around there. Basically, we had, I was in the right place with the right people. And so we got together and we redid Osawa and Kushi's experiments. We had a chamber, we pressurized oxygen in it, but this time we put pressurized argon, then we put oxygen, but this, instead of doing sodium, because sodium hydroxide, like when you get it in the air, it's like very caustic. Pure sodium metal will just blow up when you touch it with water, right? Not a good thing. So we use deuterium, and deuterium is a hydrogen isotope. It's mostly hydrogen as a proton, but in deuterium, it's got a proton and a neutron. And actually you can get that as a thing called heavy water, which is a chemical supply house. So it's one oxygen with two deuteriums. That's called heavy water. We put that in there with the argon, and we did our electric spark from the electrodes. It was like a DC pulse spark. And we were fusing, what we do is we'd fuse the oxygen. We had a spectral analyzer there with that, just picks up all the frequencies. And so we fused the oxygen with the deuterium. We were making fluoride 18, but fluoride 18 is not stable. It kicks off an electron and becomes actually it usually does electron capture, or kicks off a positron and turns into oxygen 18. And that releases a little bit of energy. That's how it kicks stuff off. So basically it makes heat, you boil water, you make electricity. So we prove that. And we, of course, we're fighting a patent with the patent office. We had also had third-party verification from all places, TSA systems, right? The stuff that builds the Transportation Security Administration's radiation detectors, right? They third-party verify, but that's not good enough for the government, right? So they kept denying us the patent. Well, we posted our stuff. Instead of being secretive and hidden, we posted it up on ResearchGate so everybody could read. We've been up there since, I think, 2014, our paper in one way or the other. We had a few edits along the way, but it's the same paper. And we had the group in Scotland working with the University of Valencia in Spain. The SCOTA group is what they're called. They actually recreated our experiment, except they did it differently. We were using a spectral analyzer to pick up the fluoride, or showing fusions going on. They actually got a glass B detector, which detects hydrogen fluoride, or fluoride, right, being produced. So they proved they were a third-party verification. And they're going to use, what happens is you make fluoride 18 is radioactive, right? Breaks down. And so they use it in oncology. They attach it to sugars. Usually it's made in like a big particle accelerator, right? Then they got to pull it out and then they put it in these sugars, and they rush the sugars to these patients, and they inject it in them. And then all the sugars with the fluoride 18 go to the cancer, because cancer loves to eat sugar. And then they can put them on like a plate. They basically can put them in a box with imaging stuff, and it'll show all the cancers, even tiny cancers all over the body. So they patented, or they applied for the patent for doing fluoride 18 with that, which this is okay with us because we patented for the use of energy production with fluoride 18.
The body thrives when it has a mission, and there is no greater mission than to become the change we wish to see in the world. Sometimes, though, we need a little help from consultation and support services. Have you discovered that this world is not what you thought it was? Have recent global events awakened you and leave you feeling unsettled? Do you feel isolated with your not-so-popular newfound beliefs? Would you like to learn to thrive in this new state of awareness? It is a big shock to wake up and find that the old familiar world is gone, and it can be disturbing to go down the various rabbit holes only to find that the information is difficult to digest, and few people are willing to talk openly about it. You are not a conspiracy theorist. You are awakening, and once you find your way through it, there are many blessings on the other side. My name is Karen Holton, and I offer vital services that may be just what you need, and support for your journey into the weird and wonderful. Check out my Awakening Support and Ascension consultation, created to support individuals with their chosen alternative realities and lifestyles, health and recovery, and spiritual adventures. For more details, check out the various vital services found on my website, and be assured that I have found personal success with every category featured. My website is www.KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com. That's KarenHolton healthcoach.com.
So if they want to help people in the medical business, go for it. We have that's a good thing, right? So we're going to help them, and they're going to help us as much as possible, to push this in. But in the paper, if you go to in fact, anyone listening, you can actually download the paper and get all the information. Just go to Google or any search engines and write down MOXY. That's MOXY. It's not IE. It's MOXY fusion, and then the word ResearchGate. And a downloadable PDF will pop up, and you can just download that on your computer, and then you can read the paper. And I'm going to talk about some stuff that's in that paper. And anyway, you'll get Osawa's stuff. You got the stuff I just talked about. But some of the other things that we had there is a guy's named Carrillo and Arillo. I think that's how I spelled it. I'm probably butchering your names. Pardon me on doing that. But what they did is they were basically taking tungsten oxide and doing this MOXY fusion with it in a crude sense. Not like when you use the pressurized argon atmosphere, it's like 10,000 times faster. They were just using the regular argon because the air that you breathe is about 0.9% argon. So there's some argon in their cells just from the ambient air. If they'd had like 100% argon, it would have gone much faster and bigger. But they were basically fusing tungsten with oxygen, and it produced gold in one side. But there's also a thing called MOXY fission. So sometimes the oxygen would combine with the tungsten, and it would cause the tungsten atom to break down, to shatter. The new daughter atom would shatter, and so it would produce new things like beryllium 9. When it produces beryllium 8, that turns into 2 alpha particles, 2 heliums. That's why you find helium in there. Beryllium 9 is only made in a fission process. There's no beryllium 9 made in stars, right? Because you can't there's not a chance for that to happen. So when you see beryllium 9, you know you had a fission process, not a fusion process. So it breaks down. One piece becomes beryllium, another piece became a thulium. That's a rare earth metal, and some others of it became europium, because one of the things is tungsten is like an element of metal, and most metals come in like 3 or 4 isotopes. That means it has the same number of protons but different numbers of neutrons. So when you fuse oxygen 16 with the different isotopes, it produces different metals and or different decay paths. And it also so there's a little bit of oxygen 18, and so that produces totally different ones too. So basically these guys were producing gold, and then there's another guy called Dr. Bass, and he was doing a similar method, and he was taking thorium, which is a radioactive metal. It's not as radioactive as uranium. They're in the actinide series. And he was using a MOXY process he didn't understand what he was doing. It was MOXY. But he was, for 300 watts, he converted 1/10 of a gram of thorium into either tin or copper, unique isotopes, and some decay products. Unfortunately for him, one of the decay products was a radioactive gas. That's why it's the late Dr. Bass. That's why we're taking 60. So
Ken, so what you're talking about here, could it be classed as alchemy?
It is precisely alchemy. But alchemy you can do, and one of the things is you can do this in well, we did ours in our basement with electronics we built. You can basically do all the alchemy you want, because remember those sodium streetlights I talked about?
Yes.
You can do the Osawa and Kushi method, but you do it with tungsten oxide. And if you use a zirconium hafnium oxide, which is 50 cents a pound, you buy it from China, you can produce all the metals of the platinum group. And
so why? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, well, I'll just finish. Let me finish the final thing. The punchline, I guess, to speak. Are you? Am I still functioning? Okay, there we are. A little bit slow here on this side. I was just ensuring I wasn't sticking. Basically, what happens if we extrapolate from the work of Dr. Bass, because he used 300 watts to convert 90% of 1/10 of a gram of thorium into these different isotopes. So we were extrapolate for tungsten oxide gold production at 90% accuracy. Your input cost would be $60 for an ounce of gold. Now the machine's going to cost, that's your electricity, that's your argon, that's your tungsten oxide. Now your machine cost is different, But one thing's cool, if you really want to be a guerrilla alchemist, you go down, those sodium street lamps I mentioned, right? They've been replacing them with those LED street lamps.
Yes.
Now, what happens is, what do they do with the ballast? That's like the transformer and the power supply. They have warehouses full of used sodium street lamp ballasts and power supplies. And so they're going cheap. They're going for scrap. So you can just grab a bunch of those, and basically you make your own bulb. You stuff it full of tungsten oxide or zirconium oxide and pressurize it with oxygen. It have to be ceramic, have to be tough, because when you turn it on, it's going to get thousands of degrees, right? And so the pressure is going to go up in there. So you need to make, it doesn't have to be big. It can be small. You just make small batches, but it's going to get really hot. So you need you probably have to have a ceramic like bulb you make with the electrode sticking into it, and then put it like in a stainless steel or a steel container so it doesn't blow up. And then when you turn it on, also one thing, by the way, it makes X-rays. If you go look at my paper, because usually when you do atomic stuff, you guys probably heard about that. They always walk around with the Geiger counters.
Yes.
Looking for, well, that's because it produces the normal fission or fusion produces things in the gamma ray span. That's really high energy. MOXY fusion lowers the Coulomb barrier. That's the barrier that it takes to fuse elements together. It actually creates these soliton smoke ring, electron smoke rings, and the fusion inside of that's different. And so MOXY fusion comes out in the X-ray band. So like remember those guys, those cold fusion guys, Dr. Fleischmann and Pons, and they did that cold fusion discovery they announced in 1989. And then there was a big stink, and they said it's not real, and they totally oppressed them. Well, things got so bad, Pons went back to France because he's French, right? He's just they respected him there, and they thought it was a good discovery. But in America, they were abused, but Fleischmann kept doing his experiments. Well, one of the things is, he's walking around with the Geiger counter all the time. He's getting X-rayed. So that's why it's the late Dr. Fleischmann. And then there's another guy named Ken Soldiers. He's also the late doctor, because he was doing fusion events. What he did is, this is kind of gave it away. he was firing these solitons, these electric smoke rings across a vacuum and hitting these metal, basically metal aluminum plates. And when the plate was pure aluminum, nothing would happen. It'd put a little pit in it. But when he had a thick aluminum, actually, I think it was by accident, and then he started doing it. When he had a aluminum oxide layer, the alumina had rusted and basically oxidized, and the pulse, the little soliton hit the plate. He saw the elements of new elements, the kind of elements you get if you fused oxygen with aluminum. Voila! And so basically, that's what happened. That's what MOXY fusion is. And of course, if you use tungsten oxide, you can produce that. If you use zirconium oxide or hafnium oxide, because you get the pretty much they come together. Hafnium and zirconium in the same family. So when and it's basically from beach sand, right? Little zircons, they come out of granite things. Like some beaches are like 15% little zircons. They look almost like sand, but they're not. They're zirconium oxide rather than silicon oxide. So that's why they're 50 cents a pound, and that'll make the platinum group metals. And there's all kinds of other, MOXY fusion type reactions, because you got an oxygen with a metal. So all the different metals, oxygen fusing with all the different metals make a whole bunch of other metals. So it's just, and they make interesting isotopes, some monoisotopic. So it'll be huge in the future.
Yeah,
and
I have a couple. Sorry, I want to let you finish, but I have a couple questions.
No, that's enough. I've probably gone on long enough. I hope your people aren't getting heavy-eyed.
Oh, it's fascinating, but I'm not real sure that I want to encourage folks to try this at home. Not yet, not until they know what they're doing.
Oh, yeah. So you would have to read. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I'm sure Ken is not telling you should run out and start this in your basement either, but I'm just saying that, you have to know what you're doing, I think, to be safe. But I got to ask you, the number one question when I was listening to you speak is, if you know how to do alchemy, and turn things to gold, it sounds a little bit like Rumpelstiltskin here, spinning straw into gold. Why aren't more people doing it? The government's saying, oh, Lordy, we have no money. Why aren't they making gold?
Well, because we're basically the ones that discovered it. That and the Scotia group. I mean, they just redid our stuff and proved our experiment, but they're going to use that fluoride 18 for medical purposes. Go for it. We were going to use it, fluoride 18 turns to oxygen 18, makes a little heat, boil water, make electricity, right? That's what we're going to use it for. Or you can synthesize all these metals. Basically you can synthesize any precious metal for, the hardest metal, by the way, to synthesize is silver. So that goes up. But, for your inputs for like gold are $60 an ounce. Okay, that's the inputs. The cost of the machine and all that's going to be expensive. And if you're 90% efficient, right? If you're 5% efficient, you're not going to make quite as much money as you're 90% efficient. But Dr. Bass is 90% efficient, so it's not inconceivable. People can make a 90%, even a 50% efficient system would still be highly profitable for people. And people are doing it; they're just doing it clandestinely, by the way.
Okay. Because this is really ringing to me like in the days of Tesla, how what he was to electricity, it's almost like what you are to chemical reactions.
Let me
you know what they did to him, and you know what they did to Wilhelm Reich, and you know what they did to everybody else. I just hope you got some protection, Ken.
Oh, well, what I'm doing is I gave it away. I'm kind of Ken the science slut. I just gave away the technology. So I was like on rents. If you go to one of a recent rents show about a month ago, I gave much more details. We went on and on about this, but basically they tried to keep it secret, whereas we just release it to everybody. And now other people have done it, the Scotia group, and there's other groups out there. There's hundreds, thousands and thousands of people have downloaded the paper. There's dozens of groups doing it. It's pretty much every country has, or the smart countries. I don't know about the US. They're not too bright here, especially the government business, but hey, they could even do it if they wanted to. But so anybody can do this. This cat is out of the bag. People are doing it all over the world. It's something they can't take back anymore. It's out there. A lot of times, if you try to be secretive on things, they can just, if they whack that guy, then the information goes away. And so they have an incentive to whack the guy. So the only way to be safe, it's like Dr. Greer talks about it. Dr. Stephen Greer, he just releases everything. He doesn't keep anything secret. He just releases it all out to the world so everybody can see it. And there's no hidden secrets. And that's what we did by publishing it on ResearchGate. And there's also in that ResearchGate site, you can wander in there type in my name and Gary Rodriguez, and there's a site with lots of other cool scientific discoveries. Maybe not as profound, but pretty cool stuff, and some great math about, like the Vesica Pisces, the flower of life things, and how the universe scales in size. That's some of Gary's stuff. We have one, seismic transparency. Those old Inca walls or the pre-Inca walls that still stand today?
Yes.
You can go to our seismic transparency paper, and it basically, we figured out kind of why that works, and because there's no straight lines, and they have one for every one giant rock, they have 3 smaller rocks and 9 smaller, and there's no straight, lines. And basically it's like they had one of those pre-Inca platforms. They had an Inca temple on it. The Spaniards came there, and I think it's in Lima, Peru, or no, it wasn't Lima. What's the other Peruvian city? I don't know. Anyway, it's up. I'm trying to remember which. Anyway, they built. It was like one of the capital of Peru for a while. They raised the old Inca temple, and they built one of those cathedrals on it. Yeah. And then an earthquake came, and the cathedral was turned to rubble, but the platform was perfectly fine. They built another cathedral. Another earthquake came, turned it to rubble. Now they're on their 3rd cathedral. And because when you do our type of building where you just put bricks and they're all like in lines, when the earthquake waves come, it just unzips and the whole building falls apart. When they built these of different sizes and different, weights put together, it kind of, when the wave comes, they lock together like a ship and just kind of ride the wave as a unit.
Yeah.
And so they're seismically transparent to the earthquake wave.
They're also on engineered soil, which is another whole fascinating discovery. I want to bring us back a little bit to the MOXY reactor, and that is, so what I'm understanding is it's much safer than the reactors they're using today. It sounds like it's inexpensive to build them. Is there a drawback to them? What's the hidden, you mentioned some X-rays or maybe some gamma rays that you can deal with.
You turn that sucker on, it's gonna glow an X-ray light. Your eyes cannot see X-ray light, but it's giving out X-rays, a lot of X-rays. That's like on our test reactors. We actually have built test reactors, little test reactors. We've given them away to research institutions and corporations and stuff, that are interested, right? That have the facilities and they're going to do it and share data with us. So we've already given those away, and so we have like a 20-foot starting cord. And you want to have protection, right? You want to put like shielding between you and whatever's going on, because those X-rays are just going to be going everywhere. Like totally, they're going in all directions. And if you made one, yours would do too. And then another thing, by the way, those Fleischmann's and Pons reactors, they had the cold fusion. They thought they were using palladium. Other people use platinum. They thought that because hydrogen, deuterium gas, deuterium will sneak into those electrodes. It's like electrolysis cell where it's like heavy water. Hydrogen comes off one thing, anode, oxygen comes out the cathode, or I think that's the way it goes. And so hydrogen packs inside those electrodes, and they were thinking that the hydrogen deuterium was fusing into helium and then producing energy. Well, what happens if you go in the paper, I can't remember what page it is, if there's in your base house where you have, you do your testing for radon, right? You got those little containers. When you open up that thing so the air can get in, what's inside of that is this little tiny chip. It's a Columbia resin chip. And what happens is if a radon is really close to it and it goes off, it makes an alpha particle, which is just a hot helium nucleus. And if it hits that resin, it kind of punches a hole in it. Not that you can see it, but if you take that chip and they dip it in hot sodium hydroxide, it'll actually etch out a little pit that you can see in a microscope. And so they put basically to check your radon basement, they have, they know the resin has no hits in it, maybe one by accident, right? And then you put it in there for a day, then you close it, right? Or whatever's a week, I think you close it, and you ship it into the guys, and they basically take that chip, dip it in a hot hydrogen sodium hydroxide, and then they count the number. They have a little computer, counts the number of pits. So they put some of those little chips above one of those electrolysis cells, like Fleischmann Pons or other people were using, and the resin was just pitted, massively pitted. Imagine 10,000 times your worst radon basement, right? And so what would happen is, what was going on in those cold fusion cells, it was not fusing deuterium into helium, it was fusing platinum or palladium with oxygen into radioactive radon or a radioactive xenon gas that then was bubbling out into the air of the laboratories, and the scientists were breathing it. So imagine breathing air that's why Fleischmann's not around too. Was it the X-rays he was cooking himself with? Because he's walking around with a Geiger counter looking for gamma rays. Well, I can't see any gamma rays. They didn't understand X-rays were coming out. When we did ours, we used X-ray plates because Gary's brother was a dentist. So we got dental X-ray plates, which aren't affected by electromagnetic radiation or that stuff, and they would just get instantly fogged. You'll see an example of that. So yeah, you have to be careful because it'll produce X-rays. If you're doing the certain metal oxides, you're going to producing radioactive gases, so you'd have to vent it really well. So you really need to read the paper, read all the references, and then study up a bit. But it can easily be done. I mean, the power supplies are available. A sodium power supply for a sodium streetlight would do it. And you just make a small reactor, stuff it full of your metal oxide, burn it till it's done, and then open it up and then process the material. And so it's a bunch of little batches, but you can do it. I mean, I don't know how efficient it'll be. You have to work on that. But, if you're good as Dr. Boss at 90%, you can make gold for $60 an ounce, minus the machine cost.
Yeah, it sounds incredible. I want to invest. I also wanted to ask you, so if the proper shielding was there, is this an energy source that could benefit humankind, that could do away with, how we've got all this propaganda about, having to go green and all this other jazz, and they're messing with, windmills and solar panels, and those are fraught with their own sets of problems. But is this something that we could be using? Are we in another situation like Tesla where the powers that be don't want to use something that's safer or more efficient? Like, what's the scoop, Ken?
Oh, absolutely. This could easily be used for power generation. Our reactor, when we had our reactor running, we didn't have, let's say, the heavy water in it. We were just doing the electric discharge and the argon gas. We could run it forever, right? No problems. The minute we put the heavy water and had everything in there to run it, the thing would get so hot, the gas would get thin, the electric arc would spark. So we had to actually bury it in ice, and then it would just melt that ice. So we were using, by the way, rechargeable small 12-volt batteries, right? So because people could blame, it's all coming from the power out of the wall, right? Because you get a lot of power out of the wall. Well, you can't get a lot of power out of a couple 12-volt batteries. And then you can also, they're rechargeable, so you can actually see how much the voltage has dropped, how much energy has discharged. And just looking at rough estimates, we were producing more power than went in. But we weren't interested in really doing over unity or calometrics. We were just interested in showing the various frequencies. We put different electrodes because, you're getting the MOXY fusion from the oxygen and deuterium, but you're also getting some of the fusion from oxygen and let's say the iron electrode, or if you're using a copper electrode, or if you're using a silver electrode, you get different types of fusion. So you're getting multiple types of fusion, which is why we had a multi-band spectral analyzer. So we could look at all the different X-ray bands and gamma ray bands and see where it's coming out at. And so we could see, this is obviously a silver fusing. This is probably copper fusing. This is iron fusing. This is whatever. This is the deuterium oxide fusing. So we had different, we could start, kind of figuring things out. But it's, I mean, we were, it was, it's like, and remember, this was Osawa and Kushi came up with this in the late 1950s, early 60s. If their research had been allowed to proceed the way it was going, we would have had fusion reactor plants by the early 1970s. So there never would have been any Chernobyl, never any Fukushima, never any carbon crisis. All of that never would have happened. We would have had cheap energy produced by MOXY fusion, or in this case, I probably would call it Osawa Kushi fusion. Those reactors would be everywhere in the world, and people would imitate them, and the whole climate crisis would have never happened, nor the big radioactive meltdowns, nor all the atomic waste from the current fission product plants. No, we would have been, and Stephen Greer, Dr. Stephen Greer talks about it. He talks about, the UFO thing, but he's also talking about,
he's also into free energy. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we've
what
lost
a game changer.
Yeah, we lost a century. That's not the only one. There's all kinds of other things, maybe the anti-gravity they talk about, other energy sources, things like that technology that's been developed that never has been released for the use of the people. Our taxpayer paid for it, but it doesn't get to go to benefit the population. So, these are basically these black budget parasites just feeding off the human race. the American taxpayer in particular,
Yeah,
you know, for their own benefit. You know, they're just criminals. That's all they are. They like to, they probably have
absolutely.
imagined they're saving the human race or something, but no, they're just a bunch of thieves that are,
They're
you know, benefiting.
they're psychopaths,
Yeah.
absolutely. Now, where do you see this going? Not the global politics, but the MOXY reactor. Where are you going with this? What are your next steps, if you're able to tell us?
Oh, we're just
And
keep
what's
we're
your
going to
hope?
keep sending. Oh, we have these reactors ready to go. They're in a box, all packed up, ready to go. You just get it. You bring your own detectors, whether it's a glass bead detector to detect the fluoride production, or you know and also a multiband spectra. We use a silver iodine one, but there's others, and you can just hook it up, plug it in, add the ingredients, turn it on, and away it goes. Because when we did ours, it worked the very first time we did it because we'd thought out the experiment. We'd had planned it all out right, very meticulously. And so when we did it, we did follow the Osawa Kushi protocols. So when we did it, it actually worked the very first time. not like not like ITER. They're going to build this thing called ITER, International Thermal Energy Reactor, I think. And it's this giant $30 billion fusion reactor that's going to supposedly going to turn tritium and helium, or tritium and deuterium into, you know, helium. And there's this whole process, and it's meant to get done in 2031 or something. Who knows when it's supposed to get done? It's supposed to get done, you know, 2025, but it's not going to get there. And so, you know, but you can do the same thing for, you know, a few $1,000s yourself, and you'll produce more. And yours is actually over Unity, and theirs will, frankly, will never be over Unity. And they know that. It was the biggest boondoggle in science. That'll become like a big museum of stupidity, where they're the science boondoggle, where you can get together and find ways to defraud the government with boondoggle projects where the money could have been spent much better. But you know, that's the way it works. And so that one, for the other MOXY, it's out there. Thousands, tens of hundreds of thousands of people have heard my talks on MOXY. Thousands have downloaded the papers, right? And spread them around. So, and we know several major governments doing research ones, not the United States that we know of, but other ones in other parts of the world where they're kind of have a developing societies, right? They're moving forward with technology. And so that's all. Yeah. So it's out the bag. This is being developed all over the world. And, you know, probably it'll start with metals, people making metals and making a profit, right? Cost them, okay, it cost me $500 to make an ounce of gold, sell it for 12, for, you know, for 1,800. Well, I made some money now. I can buy more equipment and do something, right? Or, you know, platinum, palladium, rhodium, whatever it is. They'll just do it. We're not going to do that really ourselves. We could, but you know, we're so busy doing other things. I mean, C60 PurplePower, which is now, by the way, the website is Shop C60, because we've got, you know, we've gone, PurplePower is now just a brand. It's shopc60.com. If you go to purplepower.com, it'll take you to Shop C60, obviously, because we have all kinds of things there. We have like the traditional oils in avocado, olive oil, and MCT coconut oil. We also have our new gummies are in whole, and all of its organic, you know, oils in whole organic coconut oil, and they're really tasty. It's about each gummy is about 2/3 of a dose. So if you take 2 gummies, it's that's enough. Of course, you have to be careful because they're really tasty. So no more than 3 gummies, otherwise you might get the zoomies. It's like, whoa, I am really
you get a
supercharged
detox
on my stuff. It's just gets you a little bit going. So that one. Also, we have a roller, which is, you know, for skin stuff. We have C60 Sexy, an edible massage oil.
Oh yeah, tell us about that.
Well, that's what it is. It's C60 Sexy, basically C60 and avocado oil. You just spray it on. It's an edible massage oil for whatever you want to use it for. And we don't probably need to go any further there, but you can also use it topically in other places besides the places you're thinking where it might be. And also there's going to be a couple of facial products coming out here within a month or so, probably within a month, 6 weeks, somewhere like that. Everything's ready to go. We're waiting on the bottles. The bottles are there. So they're doing the mix and it'll be out soon. So if you just go to shopc60.com, you will see those new products when they get there. But on our last week, we released the sugar-free gummy, because the first one we came out with a gummy with, you know, it had sugar, cane sugar, right? Organic cane sugar, right? But still, that's not good enough. And so, so everybody wanted sugar-free for the totally keto people, right? So we finally got a sugar-free one, allulose and monk fruit, and it tastes almost identical. It's hard, people can't really tell the difference between the sugar and the sugar-free. So it's really good tasting. And,
wonderful.
and I think we were the first ones to have a gummy out there. It's hard to put that much. We use the whole coconut oil. It's hard to put that much oil to make actual gummy, because usually when you do that, it'll turn into a gooey. Took us about 2 years to figure the process out. So good luck, competitors, on finding, putting the concentrations we have in ours and making a great tasting gummy. So we're always the first. We were the first to put it in avocado oil, the first to put it in MC2 oil, the first to put it in any oil besides olive oil, which of course we do have the nutritional olive oil. And, we have it in gummies, we have it in facial products, we have it in, other skin products.
And pets.
Sexy.
Tell us about what you have for pets.
Oh yeah, we have it for pets, and it's pretty much the same stuff you give people. It's just in smaller bottles, especially with like a little drop. Because when an average, if I was, let's say, 30 and not 60, I would probably use a teaspoon or maybe a teaspoon and a half of C60 and avocado oil. Right now that I'm 60, I need to use like a tablespoon.
Me too.
C60 Me too. And or maybe a tablespoon and a half or something, because as you get older, your antioxidant levels go down, so you need more C60 to keep your mitochondria fully functional. So it's kind of and also if the bigger you are, the more it is. On our website, shopc60.com, there's actually a weight calculator, weight age calculator. So you plug in your age, you plug in your weight, and it'll tell you how much you should be taking. And of course, if you're working on a health problem, you probably want to be taking more as well.
So that's fantastic, Ken. I've really, really enjoyed our conversation today. It's been very illuminating, even mind-blowing. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're between flights and you're at the airport, and you took the time out to be here on the show. I appreciate you very much. And I want to thank you for all the work you've done, because you're making a difference in my life and the difference of my friends, like Chris Matthew from Forbidden Knowledge News, also Rex Bear from Leak Project. Like, so many people are really benefiting, and it makes all of our lives better. Even our shows are better. Everything's better.
Oh yeah.
And what a wonderful contribution to humanity during these really weird times.
Oh yeah, and you got to think about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you have anything you'd like to say before we close out the show today? Please feel free to whatever you want to share.
I mean, C60, it's like I said, just one tool in the toolkit for better health, but it's a really good tool. And it's another one of those suppressed things. Why are we all using? Why don't average person know about it? If some government out there, like government El Salvador, somebody who's developed, if they were to go and provide low cost C60, because right now C60 costs more by weight than gold. Right, because the manufacturing process is very involved, and single batch things. If if they put some money into research, they could produce C60 at a whole lot lower cost than they do today, right? And so if you had a country that provided C60 to its population, I bet your healthcare costs would go down 70-80%. Well, we know who wouldn't want that to happen. So here's another perfect example of a product or something that can help people. If you can, because what it is like when they double the rat's lifespan, they completely prevented the occurrence of cancers, cognitive decline, and all those other things associated with aging. So basically those rats, those Wistar rats, live like really long, healthy rat lifetimes till they got to like that expiration date. Because what's the use of living long if you're going to be decrepit, right? But
exactly.
They stayed long, healthy rats. So if you could do the same with people just live long, healthy lives till they hit their expiration date. And all of this degenerative diseases wouldn't happen if it was provided to them. But and the cost of government for every dollar it spent on providing C60 to its population, it would probably save $20 on healthcare cost, right? Which would make incredible sense to do that. But how much? But it's not about making sense and helping the people. It's about corporations and the politicians who take their bribes as paying contributions, keeping the cash flowing. And we had a little experience about that the last 3 years. About instead of caring about people's health, it's just about making the money. And of course now the consequences are coming due, and I think the pitchforks and torches will soon be on the streets for that one. Yeah, that's an inevitable one. So so this is just another one of these technologies, and it's not the only one too. It's like Dr. Stephen Greer, that's a good person to check out. If you've never seen any of his work, go check it out, because he's got these guys 50, 200, 300 military people or ex-contractors, military contractors can come forward and saying, hey, I saw a UFO, I seen aliens, we're rebuilding the technology, hundreds and hundreds of them, right? Like, it's a real thing, obviously.
It is a real thing. It is a real thing. And I follow Dr. Stephen Greer's protocols, and I share that with other people. I myself have had extraterrestrial full contact. It's a mind-blowing experience, but I think everything is in flux right now, and so we want to be as healthy and as intact as possible. We want to look, take good care of our bodies, our minds, our souls. We want to, the people we love, we want to take good care of them. I think there's a bit of a, I don't know, harvest time coming, and there's definitely a recompense for what's been going on with all the shenanigans. But I encourage people to stay positive. I mean, you can't feel positive all the time. Nobody does. But just keep in a good, orderly direction. Take good care of yourselves. Check out the website for C60 PurplePower below, and also the other links below, so that you can, be as advised as possible, because it's really important to keep yourself informed in these days. And Ken, I want to thank, sorry, go ahead.
I also want to make a pitch for Chris again at Forbidden News, and that, use his link. They'll probably be in the links below. Use his coupon code, and we'll go to the site. And even if you wander off and do some other sale or something that's available, which sometimes it is, he'll still get credit for that, and he gets a benefit for that too. So it's just a good thing to do. And
yes,
yeah, and I guess we'll probably do more of these. It's just, but we're just, remember, we're just one of a bunch. I'm one of Cliff High's woo scientists, by the way. If you probably heard of Cliff High out there, if you haven't.
I'm a big fan of Cliff High as well.
So I'm one of his mini woo scientists. So I'm not the only one. There's other amazing discoveries out there that these scientists have had, and you're just one of the first. So we're kind of like doing a woo science download into the system, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and if you ever want to come back, I'd love to have you back. And maybe we could get more into the woo. I'm totally into the woo.
Oh yeah, I could talk some more about this, and absolutely. I have we could talk about the seismic transparency. I did a bunch of mathematical formulations. Pretty much, if you want to anti-missile satellites or anti-satellite missiles, I came up with a whole set of quasi-Newtonian equations. They're like 3 magnitudes more effective than Newton's. I'd use it for space exploration, but they took it and used it for weapons, of course, and didn't pay me a dime or even acknowledge it. But that's in the record, folks. That can't go away either. So and then that's what it is. It's just we really have a bunch of criminals running us, and taking what could be gone for positive, beneficial things and using it for bad ends. And those people need to go away, and good people need to take over and run things, so we can have a decent and dignified future.
That's right. That's right. I agree 100%. And thank you so much again for joining us. And I want to thank all the viewers and the listeners. And yes, please take advantage of the link below. Help support free speech by helping to support Forbidden Knowledge News. Chris Matthews worked very, very hard on getting you all of this information, and we all love him so much. So take care, everybody, and we'll see you next week on the Quantum Guide Show. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us on the Quantum Guide Show. Become the change that you wish to see in the world. Subscribe to my YouTube, Odyssey, and Telegram channels. Like this video and share it with your friends. You can also find the Quantum Guide Show and my other podcast called Aliens and Astrology on the Forbidden Knowledge News Network. That's www.forbiddenknowledge.news. And while you're at it, check out my website, www.KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com, where you will find some amazing products and services and an abundance of free resources to help you with your journey. All of the links are in the description below. And in the meantime, until we see you next week, keep up the good work.
Surrendering to endlessness puts all my inner strife to rest. For time gives birth to hurriedness. It all makes sense, well, more or less. And the sages put me to their test. Hard and soul I do my best to find the answers to my quest. I wonder and I must confess, I don't know where it comes from, but I know it's okay. If this is all an illusion, then I'm willing to play. It's okay. It's okay.